Remote therapeutic monitoring. It sounds complicated, doesn't it? Technical, maybe even intimidating, but here's the actual truth. It's actually the simplest thing in the world. My name is Dr. Andrew Grecki, and I'm going to explain remote therapeutic monitoring to you in under 2 minutes. Then I'm going to show you why insurance companies are actually happy to pay for it, right? So let me break this down, I guess, as simple as I can come up with. In a step-by-step process, right? So step one, you already give patients a home exercise program. At least I hope that you do. You should be. And every single day, right? In your practice, you evaluate a patient, you treat them, and then you say, hey, here are some exercises I want you to do at home. You might give them a paper handout like I did 15 years ago. You might email them something. You might demonstrate the exercise and just hope that they're going to remember, how to do that, right? That all sounds, pretty familiar. I would call that standard physical therapy, right? That's step one. Step two, remote therapeutic monitoring just means that you're monitoring whether the patients are actually doing those programs. That's it. That's what RTM is. You give them digital access to their exercises through an app or software. They can watch the videos, they see your instructions, and they track their progress. And then somebody checks in with them monthly to see if they're doing the exercises correctly, encouraging them to keep going if they're doing a great job, trying to motivate them to do more if they're not engaging with the home exercise program, answer any questions they might have. But you're really just there to support them in their recovery. That's step two. Step three is now insurance pays you for that monitoring service, right? Both having the software and the actual time of somebody monitoring. So here's a surprise. Here's what surprises most people, right? Insurance companies created billing codes specifically for this. They will pay you to monitor your patient's home exercise programs. And the average reimbursement is about $160 per month per patient. That's pretty significant. So that's it. That's remote therapeutic monitoring in a nutshell. And I told you it'd be under 2 minutes, right? You're already creating the home program, right? RTM just means that you're giving patients digital access to these programs. You're monitoring whether they're doing them correctly. You're supporting them monthly, and you're getting paid for it. That's literally it. It doesn't get much simpler than that. So you might be thinking, well, if it's that simple, why haven't I heard about this before? That's a pretty fair question, but right, RTM billing codes have only been around since 2023. So it's a pretty relatively new situation that we have here. And a lot of practice owners really just don't even know that it exists. But it does exist. It's real, it's legitimate, and it's growing extraordinarily fast. So now let me explain to you why insurance companies are actually happy to pay for this, right? And you might think, well, why would they want to pay us? But it's important. I think it's important to understand like the economics from their perspective, right? So the insurance company's problem, and you hate to even talk about their problems because they're doing very well financially, but insurance companies do have problems, and patients don't do their home exercises. That's their problem. Studies show that 70% of patients don't do their home exercise program when they're in physical therapy. Well, why does this matter to the insurance company? Right? Well, when patients do their home programs, right, a couple things happen. They when they don't do it, they don't get better as fast, right? They need more PT visits. They might re-injure themselves. They might need to get surgery eventually. And long term, the cost to the insurance company is higher, right? So let me give you an example. So a patient without a home program compliance, maybe there are 15 PT visits to get better. And then maybe they re-injure themselves 6 months later and then another 12 PT visits. And then maybe they eventually have surgery. And that total cost for the insurance company is somewhere between $5,000 to $50,000. Right? That's pretty high. Now, if you look at a patient that has really good home exercise compliance and while they're in physical therapy, they might get 8 PT visits to get better. They're going to stay better long term. They're not going to re-injure themselves, and they're going to avoid surgery. So the total cost there is between $1,200 and $1,500, right? Insurance companies love that, right? And they've done the math. If they pay you $160 a month for 2 to 3 months to monitor a patient's home exercise program, which is about $300 to $480, if that monitoring increases compliance and reduces the total number of visits in that episode of care, they save thousands of dollars. So it's a good investment for them, right? And that's important to think about that. Now, you might be thinking does monitoring actually improve the outcomes, right? Or is this just theoretical? That's a great question, by the way, and I hear it all the time. So I'm going to show you the data, right? So study one, home exercise program compliance. The research shows that when patients receive regular check-ins and support for their home programs, right? They get that home check-in, that phone call. Their compliance rates increase by 40 to 60%. That's huge. That's going from 35% to almost 55 to 75% in compliance. That dramatically changes outcomes, right? We've got another study, which I can put the links in this video, below the video. Study 2 is the episode of care length of patients who were monitored remotely required fewer total visits to achieve the same functional outcomes. Why? Because they're actually doing the work at home, and the PT visits are more effective because the patient is reinforcing the work between sessions. One of those studies, by the way, is mine, right? And our own data. So in my practice, we've been doing RTM for over 2 years now. And we've tracked outcomes for over 2,000 patients that have been enrolled through the MIPS program and the functional outcome scores. And so patients that have been enrolled in RTM had better functional outcomes. They had higher patient satisfaction. They had fewer total visits needed. They had a lower re-injury rate, and their cancel and no-show rate was lower. So we're actually applying right now for a National Institute of Health grant, and it'll be the first ever randomized controlled trial for back pain patients using RTM. But the point is, this isn't just a billing opportunity. This actually improves patient care, and insurance companies recognize that, and you should as well, right? It's important to recognize it's not just a code to bill. It actually helps the patient significantly. So, all right, let me give you a high level overview of, how billing actually works, right? I'm not going to get into the weeds, but that's what my full guide is going to be for you, which you can download. But here's the basics. So you've got some CPT codes, right? And these are codes that are specifically for remote therapeutic monitoring. We'll run through them. So we've got the 98975, which is the initial setup of the software for the patient. That's a one-time code. You've got a monthly device supply code, which is about $50 a month. You've got monitoring time codes, the 98980 and the 98981. Right, for the time of the provider. So you don't need to memorize these, but your billing software or your RTM vendor, it really should have this built in like ours does. But they exist, and they're legitimate, and they're reimbursable, and the requirements to bill for RTM, you need to meet certain points to be eligible, right? You have to have time requirements that are met. So there has to be at least 10 minutes a month of monitoring time to bill for that code. And the software has to save the documentation, right? It can't be billed until you hit those thresholds. You got to have the right device. So you have to have an FDA-approved device that the patients have access to. It's a digital device. Software, it has to be compliant with FDA. Ours is. And you have to track patient engagement, which ours does. You also have to communicate. There's communication requirements. So each month, you have to have an interactive communication with the patient, either in the phone call, a video call, or in person, but it has to be outside of patient care time. It can't just be like automated reminders. It has to be personalized. There actually has to be a conversation. And then as far as documentation requirements go, you just have to log what you did during monitoring, right? And as far as your normal SOAP notes, there aren't any. And so very limited documentation. So I know it sounds like a lot, but it's actually pretty straightforward. And if you're using an RTM vendor like us, they handle most of it for you. And the reimbursement's great, right? So the average reimbursement per patient per month is $160. Now, this varies depending on how much time you're spending engaging with the patient and monitoring their time. But gosh, $160 a month per patient is amazing. And Medicare pays, United Healthcare pays, Blue Cross pays, Aetna pays, and there's more coming online. So that's a great sign for us. This is a very great opportunity. And, there are some insurances that don't cover it yet, but the major ones do, which is great. And, so I think that's a very positive thing to think about. So what does this actually mean for your practice, right? Well, it means a new recurring revenue stream, right? This is happening every single month. It isn't just one time, it's every month. It's recurring monthly revenue for as long as the patient is in your care, right? Now, if you have 50 patients enrolled in RTM, 50 times 160 is about $8,000 a month, right? That's amazing. And even just keeping 50%, right? If you're using a vendor like us, that's $4,000 a month, and you didn't have to do any monitoring time. All you had to do was create a home exercise program for your patients. It's almost $50,000 a year. And this scales with your patient volume, so that's awesome. And then, of course, we're going to get better patient outcomes. But here's what matters more, I think, than the money, right? Your patients actually get better results, and they feel like they're getting a high-touch experience. They're doing their home programs. They're staying engaged. They're getting the outcomes that they came to you for in the first place. As a clinician, I think that's what we should care about the most. And that's happening through improved patient engagement, right? The patient feels supported. They feel like you care about their home success, right? It's not just in the clinic, and they're not just a number to you. Like, they feel like you actually care about them. They mention it in your reviews, at least they do in mine. They refer their friends and family because of it. It literally becomes a practice differentiator, right? And there's no additional patient visits required, right? You don't have to change that. You're not increasing the volume your providers have to see. That's a big one, right? We don't want our providers to have to see more visits to generate more revenue. You're not working more hours. You're not burning out your staff. You're getting paid for work you're essentially already doing and should be doing, which is supporting the patients at home, right? You should be very motivated to do that. The most common question that I get about RTM at this point in almost 3 years is this really legitimate, right? It sounds too good to be true. And I can tell you, yeah, it's legitimate. These are official CPT codes, in the AMA guidelines. And there's rules to follow, but again, we help you with that. And most insurance companies right now are reimbursing very generously. And, this isn't some gray area or loophole, right? I've personally been audited by Blue Cross Blue Shield last year with RTM specifically, and we passed with flying colors. They actually asked me to help train their auditors because they had no idea what they were talking about. This is real, right? I'm telling you. You might think, won't patients think this is a weird or intrusive, right? And again, I think we have a lot of fears. That's probably the fear I hear the most, and I had it too. But here's what actually happens, right? Patients love it. They appreciate having their customized home program on their phone. They appreciate someone checking up on them via phone once a month just to see how they're doing and if they have any questions or concerns. They feel supported is what I hear the most in our reviews on Google. In 2 years, we've enrolled over 1,500 patients, and that's amazing, right? A lot of people ask me, do I need special software or equipment? You need special software, and that's what we provide, that tracks patient engagement and allows you to give the patient a home exercise program. But most RTM vendors, they provide all this included. You don't need to buy anything up front, right? A big one I hear is this integrate with my EMR? And what I would say is, honestly, it doesn't matter. You don't really need that or want that. It's nice to have integration, but not necessary. And the documentation is so simple, it takes 30 seconds, whether it's integrated or not. So I wouldn't let EMR integration slow you down. In fact, you're going to probably find a better vendor that's outside of your EMR because they're specialists. You might be thinking, well, how much time is this going to take, right? It takes 30 seconds to enroll a patient with the digital home program. If you're doing the monitoring yourself, 2 to 15 minutes to call the patient once a month. And then documentation, again, there isn't any requirement there, so you don't have any. So that's amazing, right? Now, if you're too busy to monitor, you can always outsource that to a vendor like us, where your time then becomes very minimal, and then we do all the monitoring time for you and engagement with the patient. People are worried about getting audited. Well, I can tell you, if you're using the right software, first of all, and you're documenting on your plan of care, your initial evaluation, you're going to be fine. We use templates. We teach people how to do that. We track the time automatically. It's all on our software. It's really straightforward. And honestly, most RTM vendors, they provide audit-proof documentation templates like us. And so you should use them, use ours. So here's what you do. Here's what I want you to understand about RTM. This isn't just a billing code, right? This represents a shift in how we think about physical therapy. It's like hybrid care. For too long, we've been paid for face-to-face time, but so much of patient success happens outside of our clinic. And I know you know that, right? At home, between visits. Just like with kids at school, it's what happens at home that's important. We've already known that home programs matter the most, and we've always tried to support patients at home, but we've never been compensated for that work or had the right software to make it actually happen the right way. And RTM changes that. It's a game changer. Insurance companies are finally recognizing that what happens at home matters, right? And they're willing to pay for it. And this is good news. This is good for patients. It's good for outcomes. It's financially good for your practice. And the trend is, this is where healthcare is going, right? Remote monitoring, digital health. Supporting patients where they are, not just in the clinic, right? So RTM, it's just the beginning, I think. And so getting ahead of this curve, I think, is really important. So if you're interested in learning more about RTM, here's what I would recommend. Really simple. Step one, I would say, educate yourself, right? I'm going to give you this guide that I made that I wish I would have known 3 years ago. It's called the Physical Therapist Guide to Remote Therapeutic Monitoring, and it's free, and it's included in this video below in the link. And within this guide, you're going to learn detailed explanation about the billing codes. You're going to get documentation templates. You're going to get a revenue calculator so you can analyze your own practice. You're going to get an implementation checklist, all the things that I've gone through. You're going to get a vendor comparison guide. And that's step one. Step two is I want you to run the numbers for your practice, right? See what it could actually generate for your practice. Be conservative. See if the numbers make sense to you. Step three, I want you to talk to your team, right? Get their input. Address their concerns. Tell them how you're doing financially and what's changed in the past 5 years. Make sure they understand the why. Step four, I want you to choose a vendor, right? If you're not doing it, you really need a software. But if you don't want to do the monitoring yourself, or you got to compare options. You got to ask the right questions. You got to make an informed decision. And then step five, I want you to start small, right? So you're going to start with 10 to 20 patients. You're going to test the process. You're going to get feedback. Then you're going to scale, right? So it's not overwhelming. Look, I know this is a lot of information. I get it. Remote therapeutic monitoring it might be new to you. That's okay. It's new to a lot of people. The important thing is this is a legitimate opportunity, for you to improve your patient care and generate meaningful revenue for your practice. We generate about $40,000 a month just from RTM. Don't let confusion or uncertainty stop you from making, the effort to explore it, right? So download my guide, read it, see if it makes sense for your practice. There's no pressure. There's no sales pitches. It's just information from a fellow practice owner who's been there, who's been doing this for 3 years successfully. And I wish that I would have known this stuff, from the beginning. It would have saved me a ton of time and pain and frustration. It's not complicated. RTM is not complicated. It's not scary. It's not too good to be true. It's simply getting paid to support your patients at home, which is something that you should have been doing all along, right? Insurance companies created these codes. And they created these codes because it makes financial sense for them and also for you. It improves outcomes, it reduces long-term costs, and it can transform your practice finances while helping your patients get better results faster. It's a win-win. I'm Dr. Andrew Grecki. Hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and I hope that you'll download my guide, read it, and give me some feedback. See you next time.